Hello, everybody. This is Newsviews. I'm Linda Yu. Republican second-term Congressman Peter Roskam has won two key honors recently. The Hill, that's a newspaper that covers the House and the Senate, has named him the most up-and-coming member of Congress. Also, GOP leaders appointed him to the powerful Ways and Means Committee. A lot of it, many consider the House's most influential panel because it has jurisdiction over our taxes and Social Security, as well as trade. Peter Roskam was elected to the Illinois House back in 1993. He then was appointed to the Illinois Senate in the year 2000, and then 6th District voters elected him to Congress in 2006. He succeeded a longtime Republican, the late Henry Hyde. And Congressman Roskam, we want to congratulate you on the honor from the Hill, right? Most up and coming, right? And also for now being on the Ways and Means Committee. I've always thought that the name of the committee really is the powerful Ways and Means Committee. And it is. You're finding out that it really is.
Fascinating committee. Oldest committee in the House, and it has a very broad jurisdiction, so I'm honored to be there.
Right now, of course, the big thing is Roland Burris. Now, a number of Democratic as well as Republican state leaders have said that he really should resign for the good of the people. Governor Quinn just finally did come out to say it. Do you think he should have made that decision earlier?
I do. Look, I think that he was that he hesitated somewhat. I think what we needed to hear from the governor, from the legislative leaders, is it's time for this man to go. He's betrayed trust, and this didn't have to be this way. Back in December, they had the opportunity to strip Governor Blagojevich of the ability to appoint someone. They decided not to do that, and so now we have this problem with Roland Burris. And, you know, to take a minute and just sort of separate it out from donkeys and elephants, what this really does have an impact on the effectiveness of the state of Illinois. We now have one senator who's effective, that's Senator Durbin, and we have one senator who is, become a national punchline, and it's just not helpful all the way around. So he clearly needs to go.
Although there are a lot of people who will say that he was in that position because his vote was needed. His vote was needed for the stimulus plan. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do. I mean, I think in part, this is where my criticism is of the Democratic leadership in Springfield, who, and this is a very harsh statement, but I believe this to be true, they put their party before their state. They put their party before their country. And now, as a result, we have somebody who is marginalized, who at a time, think about the issues that we're dealing with in our public life today. And we have a United States Senator from the great state of Illinois who is just become insignificant and is not able to negotiate and is not able to advocate for Illinois. We can do better than this.
If he doesn't resign, then what happens? Will the Senate take action itself?
Oh, then the process becomes miserable.
Right, it goes on for too, right?
The Senate Ethics Committee is sort of empowered to help the passive-aggressive. There's no quick resolution of things there. The state's attorney in Sangamon County apparently has jurisdiction on the perjury question. The Illinois House of Representatives can reopen up an inquiry, I suppose, but it ultimately, this limps along and becomes very, very difficult.
So a lot of people will then say, well, this opens up a lot of opportunity for Republicans, and Republicans looking ahead then to perhaps, if he resigns, a special election, and if not, then the formal election, all right, to elect in 2010. So there's talk that you will be a Republican candidate for Senate.
When a United States Senate seat comes up, it's one that you do really take a long, slow, careful look at it. But by the same token, it's not something that you just run for just for the sake of running for it. And so I've talked about Congressman Mark Kirk, who would be, I think, a very good senator, and I've asked him to come in Friday night to speak to the group in DuPage County. He's got a very bright future, and I think you're going to find a whole host of Democrats that are going to be lining up to try and claim that Senate seat. So it's still early in a way, and but it's something to take a serious look at.
So what's your timetable for when you're going to announce?
Well, I think anybody who's going to put a good race together, Linda, has to have that together by the spring in order to put the political operation into place, to begin getting around the state. So I'd say springtime. When the daffodils are up, it's time to have a decision.
So that's when you'll announce.
Well, that's when
you'll
we'll
tell us whether you're going to.
Yeah, I
definitely
think that's the time you need to really have it together.
Okay. Voters that I talk to, people that I hear from, they're blaming all politicians now. What has gone on in this state is making most people that I've talked to just say, we don't trust any politician, Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, and some of that criticism is well-deserved. And it's incumbent upon leadership, if you want to lead, is to invite people and say, look, we can reclaim this. This can be a good thing. And even the types of things that we're dealing with as a nation right now, there's a hunger out there on the part of people to try and put forth serious proposals that are on the table that re-stimulate the economy, but do it in a way that doesn't create long-term problems, which is, I think, the great challenge that's facing our nation.
All right. Now, we were saying that you are a member now of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over a lot of things that happen to our lives. We'll take a break right now, and when we come back, we're going to ask you about some of those things. All right? We'll be right back. Back here now talking to Congressman Peter Roskam. And we want to talk about the economy, the state of the economy that this country is in. You voted against President Obama's stimulus plan. What part of it did you really have trouble with?
Well, let me start with the positive. I thought that there were some positive elements that created some tax cuts, not quite the type that I would have cast, but ultimately I think it was good to be talking about tax cuts. But the disappointing thing to me, and the reason I couldn't support it, was the amount of spending that was being contemplated. If you take the spending in that bill, $780 billion, and add the interest payments on top of it, you're well over $1 trillion. Now, the Congressional Budget Office, which is uniformly respected as a nonpartisan entity, looked at that package and they said, look, that is ultimately going to create negative economic growth beginning in 2013 and continuing till 2019. We can do better. And there was some good alternatives that were on the table that I think ultimately Speaker Pelosi wrote that bill, and I think she put in just too much spending into the future. The folks in my district, Linda, know that you cannot spend and borrow your way into prosperity. And there were many other good alternatives that were on the table.
For instance?
Well, for instance, to give a broader tax relief to the lowest two tax brackets, to lower 15 down to 20 and 15 down to 10 and 10 down to 5. Or to incentivize home ownership by giving a $7,500 tax credit if 5% goes down. Or taking small business and saying if you have a company of fewer than 500 employees, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're self-employed, remove your tax liability by 20%. President Obama's own chairman of his Council of Economic Advisors, using her peer-reviewed strategies, based on that formula, twice as many jobs would have been created, far bigger impact for the state of Illinois without the sort of tremendous cost that we're talking. And $1 trillion on top of all the spending that's happened in the past several months just made no sense to me.
So you're talking about billions of dollars for this and $1 trillion, and you know, the numbers just seem to keep on growing. But a lot of people say, all right, we need to do something major right now. We need to do something fast. For instance, like the auto companies. Now, Illinois has a number of auto plants here, billions of dollars to rescue the auto companies. Do you agree with that? Do you say that to some people who have lost their jobs at the auto plants here?
Yeah, there's no question that the federal government needs to move boldly, needs to move quickly. And there's, I think, a recognition on the part of any serious person that we're in a very difficult situation financially. But the question is, how do you move forward? You know, I was very critical of President Bush when he put together the bailout for the autos, because what ended up happening? Now they're back. They got $17 billion. Right. And is there anybody who really thinks that simply by giving them more and more money, that fundamentally that's going to change things? I think that we ought not fall into that trap.
But how do you say that to somebody who is going to lose their job because one of the auto plants is closing down?
Well, look, I represent a whole host of companies that have either relationships in terms of supplying the auto companies or financial relationships. But what common sense folks know is that you can't take taxpayer dollars and subsidize an industry that has gotten behind the curve.
Do you think because here many of the big three, the three shouldn't be big three?
Well, look, I'd love it if the big three could stay being the big three, but when they have put themselves into a situation where they came and asked for $17 billion, got it, and now we're asking for just billions and billions and billions more, when does it end?
Let them go bankrupt?
Well, there's worse things than bankruptcy, and the worst thing than bankruptcy is a continuous subsidy by the federal taxpayer that won't survive. It's putting off the inevitable.
Let's go to something else Ways and Means, all right, has jurisdiction over, and that's Social Security. A lot of baby boomers reaching retirement age now, especially a lot of them now have lost a lot of their investments because of what's happened in this economy. But Social Security very soon is going to be paying out more than it brings in. What are you going to start? You have to start doing something about it now.
No question
and can we do anything about it in this economy?
Well, here's one of the things that we've got to do. We've got to re-incentivize younger workers into understanding that they need to save. And one of the things I'm in favor of is an automatic deduction savings program. Take, for example, you've got a new worker that comes into the workplace, 21 years old, first job out of college. Let's say you take that person and you put them into a savings program that they control, it's titled in their name, and $50 a month. Well, $50 a month over 12 months is $600 at the end of the year that they have. Think about what that is like over a lot of years. That's the way we need to be re-engaging younger people as it relates to savings. And it's not an easy process, and it's not a quick fix. We didn't get into this problem with Social Security overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight.
One of your constituents comes up to you and says, my home is about to go into foreclosure because I lost my job. I can't find a new job. I did have some money in the stock market. I've lost most of that money. What are you going to do for me? What are you going to tell me about what was going to happen to me, say, in the next 6 months?
Well, the next 6 months are very challenging for that person, but there are strategies that congressional offices can be a part of in terms of actual casework and trying to intervene, and we've done this with some success, and negotiating with some of the loan companies. But ultimately, one of the areas that we've got to be concerned about on this next housing bill is how does this have an impact on the 90% of the public that's been sacrificially paying their mortgages and has stayed up on time. And that's where we need a sense of fairness about moving forward. But you're right to point out these are incredibly challenging times, and we need everybody at the table.
And everybody's feeling pretty desperate.
That's right.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for answering the questions. We appreciate you coming in, Congressman Peter Roskam. And now, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Let's get back to the news desk.